So wife sent me this article from a website called The Gamer. The title is Tears of the Kingdom would be much better without the combat. Why don't you grab a chair and let's go through this article and see what's up. This thing is written by Stacy Henley. I have no idea who that is. I mean, no disrespect to you, Stacy Henley, but we're gonna get into this. So Tears of the Kingdom would be much better without the combat. Zelda's world is full of minor threats and nuisances that derail your journey across Hyrule with no real benefit to them. No benefit. Okay. Let's keep going. Whether you love, hate, or are fairly indifferent to Zelda, you'll no doubt have seen hundreds of clips circling on social media since the game launched. True. We have seen a lot of clips flying around. Tears of the Kingdom is a game where you can really do anything, and the variety of clips highlight that. Whether players are coming up with bizarre ways to punish Koroks, that's a big thing, constructing creative solutions to all of their problems, or just thirsting over the characters, whatever you want TOTK to be, it is. And I'm not complaining. I mean, you are though. That's literally the premise of this article, but we'll keep reading. I don't think I've seen a single clip of combat, and that tells you everything you need to know. So right away, I don't think I've seen a single clip of combat. I've seen several clips of combat, and it's pretty cool. And there's a lot of options and freedom in how you can approach the combat in this game, so I'm already kind of doubting the premise of this article, but let's keep reading. Okay, so just in case you were worried that this is where they were coming from, I'm not against violence in video games. My most desired video game adaptation is Sin City, and I love Red Dead Redemption, Resident Evil, and Dead Rising. All very violent video games. I'm looking forward to Mortal Kombat 1, despite its silly name and multiverse shenanigans, and not one iota of my cells is thinking, golly gee, I hope it's not too violent. If anything, I'm hopeful Devora returns to rip more flesh open. I just think the combat derails the Zelda experience far too often. So combat derails the Zelda experience in this game. I'm very curious how that is. I'm a self-confessed outsider to all of this. Breath of the Wild never landed for me at all, and so far Tears of the Kingdom is leaving me similarly empty, despite the 6 skateboard. So right away we're establishing you are not the target audience here. Breath of the Wild did not land with you whatsoever, but yet you bought this game hoping it would be different. I can respect that. That's fine. You were just hoping you can get into the game. That's whatever. But if Breath of the Wild didn't land for you, this is more, bigger, and better Breath of the Wild, so I'm not sure what you expected. But anyway, I've been given a few points on the map, so off I go to them. But I'm frequently attacked by the same dull enemies over and over again, spoiling everything. Spoiling everything. You're just heading off to Rito Village and just running through, and then it's like, another Bokoblin. Gosh dang it, are you kidding me? Ruining everything. While a couple have been bigger creatures designed to scare you away from areas you can't go yet, most are just irritating. You defeat them easily enough, but break your weapons and your flow in the process, then do it again and again and again. So what exactly is your flow if the combat is interrupting it? Is your flow just like running, like just running and running and running with no end to it? Like, I don't understand what flow you're referring to. Also, if you would actually engage in the mechanics of the game and fuse, they don't break as often, for one thing. And second, you said earlier the combat had no point to it, but all of them drop items that you can either use to make stronger weapons that break less frequently and kill faster, or you can sell the stuff and get money. Everyone loves Tears of the Kingdom. Clearly, the Zelda team can design a better video game than I can. Maybe without the combat, the world would feel too empty. Probably. Link would seem less heroic, and the threats to the kingdom less powerful. It's just a shame that even as someone who doesn't get Tears of the Kingdom's magic, I can see the spectacular world design that pulls players in, and combat feels like an unnecessary addition to that. There's a lot going on in that sentence. It's a shame that even as someone who doesn't get Tears of the Kingdom's magic, I can see the spectacular world design that pulls players in. So at least you're kind of like paying attention and appreciating the game and its design. But then to say that the combat feels like an unnecessary addition to that, I don't understand where that stance even comes from. Like, that doesn't make any sense to me at all. Along the way, there are natural boundaries that gate your progress. Rivers you can't cross, cliffs you can't climb, environmental hazards you can't survive. These are all more effective ways of pushing players away from the wrong areas and into the right ones. They give a sense of power when you overcome them. With the Bokoblins, they're often just a nuisance.
Every word of what you just said was wrong.
So along the way, there's natural boundaries that get your progress. Sure, there's rivers, there are cliffs, and there are environmental hazards, which I assume mean the heat, the cold, those kind of things. Rivers you can't cross.
Well, first of all, through God, all things are possible, so jot that down.
I could build a steamboat in this game if I wanted to. I could build the Titanic if I wanted to. I could build a canoe with 7 rockets on the side to get across a river. What are you talking about? Cliffs you can't climb. You can climb anything. for one thing. If it's raining, you can make elixir to climb with sticky grip, Spider-Man style, climbing up the cliff. So that's not even true. Environmental hazards you can't survive. Elixirs, weapons that warm you up or cool you off, armor that warms you up or cools you off, you can survive. Not even just elixirs, but like food, meals. You can cook a meal that will keep you warm or keep you cool. I was gonna say cold, but cool is more the correct word. But you can do so many things to overcome these. Also, then you say these are all far more effective ways of pushing players away from the wrong areas and into the right ones. The whole point of this open world design is there is no wrong area. You can go anywhere that you want. In my third, I think, stream, I went to the end game. I figured out where it was and I dropped down. I barely made it, like barely made it into there. And I still haven't seen Ganondorf, but I got to the area and I fought a lot of guys and I beat a lot of them. But again, anything you can't cross in this game, like literally just strap a rocket to it and you're like good. There's nothing that prevents you from going anywhere. I don't understand that premise at all. It's like you're trying to argue that the river is a better obstacle than the enemy, so you don't need the enemy, but I can literally make a helicopter. Like, what are you talking about? And then with the bokoblins, they're often just a nuisance. Okay, sure. I mean, maybe if you're just trying to like run over and pick some apples and visit grandma's house and make some apple pie, then maybe that's a little bit of a nuisance, but they're there because of Ganondorf and the evil that's present in the world. Like, it's all part of the flow of everything. I don't get it. You are free to run away from combat, and it's not the main focus of the game. Also true. You also have puff shrooms. You have like 3 different sets of armor with stealth up. You can cook stealth up meals to avoid guys if you want to. So it's generic to avoid players seeking it out. There's also the fact that boss battles have more weight to them, and it's natural to want weaker, easier enemies to teach you the ropes. Some of these boss battles have been shared online too, although usually to show off a rocket-powered Gundam rather than the battle itself. Okay, I think the premise here is to say that the fact that they're showing off the Gundam means that even the boss battles are kind of lame and unnecessary, but the boss battles are great. I think they're a lot of fun, but the reason that people are sharing videos of rocket-powered Gundams is not because the boss battles are lame, but it's because in this game, you can build a rocket-powered Gundam. Like, that's reason alone to share the clip. Like, that is such an unusual thing to be able to do in Zelda and also just in like pretty much any game. So the fact that you can do that, people are going to be sharing that. Like, that just makes sense. Of course, Tears of the Kingdom is not in need of people's generosity. True. The reality is just the combat is boring and by far the game's weakest aspect. According to who? You? Only? Maybe a couple of other people that agree with this article, but that statement right there, that has no meaning. The reality is just that the combat is boring and by far the game's weakest aspect. You can think that, fine, but we need to rewrite that sentence and make it say, the reality of the situation is that, in my opinion, the combat is boring and by far the game's weakest aspect. Also, I'm suspicious that if you think the combat is boring, that you're just not engaging with the game's mechanics whatsoever. You can attach anything to a weapon. You can strap a beehive to a stick, hit a guy, and then make bees attack him. Give me one other game where that's possible. Literally no other game lets you do that. You can put a gem on a pitchfork and turn it into a fire rod. You can do anything in this game with the weapons. You can get just ridiculously creative with how you take these guys down, and you're out here just saying the reality is the combat is boring. Okay. Tears of the Kingdom is a very clever video game that reinvents systems and makes its world seem fresh, despite largely being a reskinned map. Have you played this game? Like, at all? Have you played it? Hyrule has the same general overworld locations, but the more you explore, the more you realize it is very different, and there's all new cave systems and all of these other new things to explore, and that's just on the Hyrule overworld. You can go down to the depths, which is as big as Hyrule, completely new, feels like a totally different planet, and there's a large collection of sky islands as well. This is not largely a reskin map. At the very most, this is like a 1/3 excessively reskinned map, and then a whole bunch of new stuff. But even away from the breakable weapons, which complement the game's philosophy despite their controversy, the combat just stinks. So I respect the first part of this sentence. Even away from the breakable weapons, which complement the game's philosophy despite the controversy. That is accurate. A lot of people like to say the breakable weapons are stupid, it just ruins the game, whatever. If you got one single weapon in this game that didn't break and was good, every item in the game is now useless. There would be no reason to explore, no reason to open treasure chests, no reason to do anything. Because as soon as you got the Master Sword, for example, if it never broke, never did anything, there is no reason to ever pick up another weapon. That would completely break the game and just ruin, again, like they said, the design philosophy, like the game's philosophy. So that part I respect, but then you just say, the combat just stinks. It just stinks. I pick up a sword, like this one right here, and it stinks, you know? It's horrible. It just smells bad. Good point. I don't know how to refute that. It bores me. And even when I'm trying my hardest to get into TOTK, fighting instantly puts me off. It's not like I'm getting faced with constant game overs and being too stubborn to understand I'm not strong enough yet. I'm winning. Like, I'm definitely winning. I want to get that straight first, like right out of the gate here. I'm winning every fight. It's still boring. And wanting to explore somewhere and then being dragged into too many fights, it usually makes me put the game down. Come here. This game might not be for you. It just might not be. If you want to explore a whole bunch of things with caves and all kinds of systems and stuff going on and like loot to grab and whatever, you might just want to pick up Minecraft. Turn on peaceful mode and just kind of go ham. That kind of sounds like your thing. Also, in all of the exploring, I feel like if you're finding a cave, you have to fight maybe like 2 to 3 horriblins, maybe a like here or there. On the way to the cave, you might find one camp. You got a few bocos, something like that. It's not like you're fighting an entire battalion of enemies just to go to one location. If you're engaging with the game as you're intended to, and you have enough weapons that are kind of like built up, you can plow through these guys in all kinds of crazy creative ways. You can even not engage with them at all. You can literally build a drone, kick it, and then it will drive over and just obliterate the entire camp of enemies, and you don't have to do anything. You can strap a cannon and a flamethrower and 2 beam emitters to a Zonai drone, and that thing will just drive over and like plow through a Boko camp. You don't have to lift a finger, but still, no, it's boring. It's really boring. I hate it. Saying this one thing in Zelda is bad feels futile because those absorbed by it love it unconditionally, and those who don't get it have a laundry list of complaints. But this is surely one thing to unite us. Combat in Tears of the Kingdom is so boring, and it's okay to admit it. Let me read that again. But this is surely the one thing to unite us. Combat in Tears of the Kingdom is so boring, and it's okay to admit it. You're telling me that in this game, where you can strap anything to any weapon, you can hit them with a stick with a mushroom attached to it and it will bounce them away. You can hit them with a beehive spear and they will get attacked by bees. You can build a robot and attack them with lasers. You can build a tank. You can build a car that shoots flames out of it and catches them on fire. You can attach a cannon to your shield and have a gun. You can electrocute them with a fruit and then blow them up with a bomb. You can, like, I could go on for hours and hours and hours on ways to defeat an enemy camp. You're telling me that's boring, and everyone knows it. It will unite all of us, and it's okay to admit it. What? Did we even play the same game? I'm so confused. Like, what is this article? I'll tell you exactly what this article is. This article boils down to one thing. This right here. This headline. Because it works on me. You see this headline, and you click that thing because you're like, oh, what the heck are they talking about? You click, and then you're scrolling, and they get paid because you're reading this thing. The only reason that this article was written was to get money. They obviously don't like this game. They do not care about this game. And if this is not your kind of game, that's totally fine. But to sit here and say that the combat is boring in the game that has probably the most creative combat options that I have ever seen in any video game is so incredibly disingenuous. I just don't get it. Like, so for example, up here, I'm looking forward to Mortal Kombat 1. We're talking about Mortal Kombat here, and it's not like I'm thinking, golly gee, I hope it's not too violent, you know, all that kind of stuff. So they like Mortal Kombat. I myself, I'm not a huge fan of Mortal Kombat. I think it's cool. The designs are pretty cool. Super gory, obviously. That's like what a lot of people want to see with it. But I'm just not the biggest fan of it. I'm not the biggest fan of fighter games in general, probably because I'm bad at them. So that would explain why I don't like it, because I don't like to get beat up on. But okay, this would be like if I sat down and I was like, you know what? I'm going to write an article. I don't really particularly like Mortal Kombat, like at all. It's not my kind of game, but I'm going to write an article about Mortal Kombat because obviously I'm the authority on this. And I'm going to say Mortal Kombat would be a much better game if it didn't have the combat. What we should do is we should just write this story, let people explore or run around this world that they want to explore, see the story, watch these cutscenes, and then when you get into an engagement with somebody, they just step up and then someone just instantly dies. Like there's no fight, no combat, but they just die instantly in like the most spectacularly gory, disgusting fashion that you could possibly imagine. Because really the combat it's super boring and it just kind of gets in the way of the gore. You know what I mean? Because like that's what people want to see. So what I think we should do is we should change the name of the game, just call it Mortal. And as soon as people look at each other, they just like they just die. Like ridiculous deaths, and that would cut out the middleman. You don't have to play the game, you just get to see exactly what you want when you want, and then everything's great. Like, do you see how stupid that sounds? Like, I am not a huge fan of the game anyway, and then I sit here and say this game would be much better without the core concept of it. It would just be so much better that way. I don't know, guys. I could ramble on about this forever. I want to hear from you too. Like, what do you think about this article, the game, the idea of the combat versus not combat? I really want to hear what you guys have to say. So drop down in the comments, leave me a comment about what you think, and I will see you guys in the next video. Enjoy continuing to play Tears of the Kingdom, and make sure you don't fight any enemies, because there's one thing we can all agree on. The combat is super boring and terrible, and it just ruins the game.